religious communities or constitutive people, and where religious minorities are marginalized or ignored. All context is different, but religious was misused for conflict and war as well.
So what do you think about taking the issue to Arab governments and asking them to urgently protect these minorities? Is this going to work? Would this work in Bosnia? Has this worked in Bosnia?
Okay, it is important to take urgent measures, of course, because, you know, there is evidently a violence on the spot, you know, and urgent measures will help just to stop the violence. But what after that? You should think about that. First, you should think about the context. So it's not only from the perspective of the dominant religion, it's also from the perspective of the state that should be secular. The issue of belonging is also important. So you mentioned citizenship, which is very important. All freedoms and all rights should be based upon the individual belonging, and all other peculiar characteristics of collectives should be based on this. But it's very important to establish the culture of tolerance and the culture of dialogue. This is something that we are still missing, but I think that this interreligious dialogue should be based on various levels. Not only religious leaders should be those who should talk with each other, meet on conference, but ordinary people, citizens of different and various backgrounds in terms of religion as well.
But you have failed to end the hatreds. You have failed to end the feuds in Bosnia. What can the Middle East learn from the things that have not worked in Bosnia?
Yeah, this is a good lesson as well, you know. You can look and learn from some mistakes as well, you know. Currently, we are not having this kind of violence, but what is important to understand that we have some sort of political community, which is important, but we are still having this culture of communities, not culture of individuals. That's the biggest obstacle for Bosnia and Herzegovina.
And no proper integration.
Not?
No proper integration.
Not proper integration as well.
Look, Carey, do you think there are any mistakes that have been made in Bosnia that we can learn from in the Middle East?
I was there in Bosnia in the really, really bad days when my wife and I went, when there was still the war going on. As I understand it now, there is a process of democratization going on in Bosnia and places like that. And if you wanted some practical comments on where we go from this, there's got to be a movement towards democracy in these countries. It was Winston Churchill who once said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the rest. And it's a marvelous statement because it really is saying that democracy is not perfect. But what it does do, it franchises everybody. It brings us all into the role of citizen to make changes. That's got to be part of the process.
All right, okay, Fadi,
I want to come back to the Bosnian example, and I think there is a great lesson to be taken from this example. And the lesson is that violence cannot be faced only on violent groups on the security level. But there is also the ideological level or the cultural level that is so important also. And if we want to ask Arab governments to protect minorities, I was saying from the beginning, it's not about only a security issue. It's, for example, asking a Christian Copt in Egypt to become, for example, the Minister of Interior or Minister of Security. In this way, you will introduce minority as a driving force for democracy in a country, and you will, because the word identity was mentioned, in fact, as long as and as far as people will feel that they are in a country where their identity is being hijacked or excluded from the public sphere, they will feel threatened.
Ahmed Saad is shaking his head here.
Yeah, well, we're talking about urgent measures. We're talking about urgent measures, and the government has its role in legislation and in doing urgent measures. Obviously, education is a long-term process where people and communities and making communities aware is going to take time. But now we're talking about urgent measures, and no one can take urgent measures except government for the time being. While we're not saying that communities will not take these measures and not meet and talk, but that is going to happen on a long term.
I'm going to move on to a question from the gentleman there in the center. You're in the third row. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm from Qatar. I have a question for both sides of the panel. Protecting minorities from whom exactly? And if they are governments, what makes them special? And to the other side of the motion, Both of you come probably from privileged minorities where you have disproportionate right compared to the others. Many people had to protest a lot in Tunisia before they could get the government to hear them, but apparently they only needed one person to speak for the Jews when someone threatened the Jews. And Lebanon is the same. Although there is exodus, a lot of exodus from Lebanon, and from disproportionately from minorities.
Okay, let's take the first question.
But they do have a different socioeconomic background, which seem privileged.
Okay, look, Carey, protecting from who?
I'm not sure of the question. Could you repeat that?
It was who are you being protected from? Who do you want minorities protected from?
Sometimes from themselves, but I think we have to bear in mind that